I'm the Philosophical Bachelor, and today we're going to look at what Epicurus stands for ethically, and we're going to do so by looking at his letter to Menoeceus. Philosophy has often been accused of being too abstract, too divorced from reality, and too impractical. What Epicurus aims to do in his letter to his friend Menoeceus is to outline practical steps to obtain the good life. The Greek term for this practical kind of wisdom is phronesis, where we use our wisdom and knowledge to manage our affairs, to manage our lives well. Epicurus was born in 341 BC and died in 270 BC. He is a founder of one of the four major schools of philosophy in ancient Greece. They are Skepticism, Stoicism, Cynicism, and Epicurianism. Epicureanism flourished for over 500 years, though most of Epicurus's works have been lost. What remains today are fragments, though we have 3 complete letters of his written to his friends on physics, celestial phenomena, and ethics, among a few other works. The one on ethics is the one we shall look at here, his letter to Menoeceus. The name of Epicurus is part of our contemporary language, with the term Epicurean depicting enjoyment of a rich offering of food and drink. The image it conjures up is one of overindulgence and great sensuous pleasure. This, however, is rather contrary to what Epicurus actually taught. While Epicurus talks about pleasure as the main pursuit of life, his idea of pleasure is not the bacchanalian pleasure of the dissolute hedonist. In his letter to Menoeceus, he talks about how his more modest notions of pleasure are the key to the good life, the happy life. In it, he outlines a practical ethics to go about obtaining such pleasures so as to live a good life. I will read the text of the letter as translated by Cyril Bailey. After each paragraph, I will explain what I think it means, sometimes drawing on other translations such as Brett Winwood and L.P. Gerson's to better understand Epicurus's ideas. It is a short and beautifully written letter, worth reading and thinking about, and so I hope you would find this video pleasurable. Paragraph 1. Let no one when young delay to study philosophy, nor when he is old grow weary of his study. For no one can come too early or too late to secure the health of his soul. And the man who says that the age for philosophy has either not yet come or has gone by is like the man who says that the age for happiness is not yet come to him or has passed away. Wherefore both when young and old a man must study philosophy, that as he grows old he may be young in blessings through the grateful recollection of what has been, and that in youth he may be old as well, since he will know no fear of what is to come. We must then meditate on the things that make our happiness, seeing that when that is with us we have all, but when it is absent we do all to win it. Epicurus believes that everyone should study philosophy, be they young or old. Philosophy is a way of taking care of our souls, our spiritual selves, and hence the sooner we begin, the better off we are. Hence for those who have not yet begun their study of philosophy, it is never too late. Philosophy can make us happy, and hence any time to begin is as good as any. You may be wondering, how does philosophy make us happy, since many of its themes may not relate directly to how we live our lives, and some can be rather depressing? Epicurus says that an old person who has studied philosophy can remember with gratitude the benefits it has brought him, while a young person with a knowledge of philosophy will be emboldened to face the challenges of her life that is still to come. Since happiness is the aim of any human being, we need to think about what makes us happy. The proof that happiness is our aim is that when we are happy, we have everything we need. But when we are unhappy, we are willing to do everything we can to become happy. It is useful at this point to realize that the happiness Epicurus is describing is not a state of euphoria and laughter. In Greek, the term is eudaimonia, which is commonly translated as happiness, but perhaps the way to view this passage is eudaimonia or happiness is what constitutes a good life. So philosophy can help us have a good life, whereby the older person can recall the ways philosophy has helped him to lead a good life, while the young person can take courage that despite life's travails, he can, with the aid of philosophy, lead a good life. To lead a good life is our aim, since if one has a good life, one has everything he needs, and if one does not, then one tries to obtain the good life. Paragraph 2. The things that I used unceasingly to commend to you, these do and practice, considering them to be the first principles of the good life. First of all, believe that God is a being immortal and blessed, even as the common idea of a God is engraved on men's minds, and do not assign to him anything alien to his immortality or ill-suited to his blessedness, but believe about him everything that can uphold his blessedness and immortality. For gods there are, since the knowledge of them is by clear vision, but they are not such as the many believe them to be, for indeed they do not consistently represent them as they believe them to be. And the impious man is not he who denies the gods of the many, but he who attaches to the gods the beliefs of the many. For the statements of the many about the gods are not conceptions derived from sensation, but false suppositions, according to which the greatest misfortune befall the wicked and the greatest blessings the good by the gift of the gods. For men, being accustomed always to their own virtues, welcome those like themselves, but regard all that is not of their nature as alien. Epicurus gives 4 principles on how to lead a good life, which has come to be known as his tetrapharmakos or fourfold remedy. The first concerns God. God's attributes are his immortality and his blessedness. We are not to assign to God things that are out of line with such immortality and blessedness. Epicurus thinks that the existence of God is not to be doubted, since by simply thinking clearly, we will obtain the notion that God or gods must exist. However, that is not the interesting part of his first principle. Epicurus contests the common popular ideas people have of God. They assign to God aspects that are not in line with immortality and blessedness. He thinks that such people are impious. Those with such false conceptions are even more impious than those who deny the existence of God. One false conception that he specifically calls out is how people think that misfortunes or bad things fall on bad people, while good things happen to good people. He thinks this idea is man-made, since people tend to think of themselves as good and those unlike them as bad. Everyone thinks of themselves as good people deserving of God's special favor. This notion is impious since it implies that God is biased. People seem to make all sorts of claims on the character of God to suit their own agenda, instead of trying to seek the truth about God. Paragraph 3. Become accustomed to the belief that death is nothing to us. For all good and evil consists in sensation, but death is deprivation of sensation. And therefore a right understanding that death is nothing to us makes the mortality of life enjoyable. Not because it adds to it an infinite span of time, but because it takes away the craving for immortality. For there is nothing terrible in life for the man who has truly comprehended that there is nothing terrible in not living. So that a man speaks but idly, who says that he fears death not because it will be painful when it comes, but because it is painful in anticipation. For that which gives no trouble when it comes is but an empty pain in anticipation. So death, the most terrifying of ills, is nothing to us, since so long as we exist, death is not with us. But when death comes, then we do not exist. It does not then concern either the living or the dead, since for the former it is not, and the latter are no more. The second of Epicurus' tetrapharmakos is that we need to get used to how death means nothing. It is neither good nor bad. Many may find this surprising, perhaps even downright puzzling, since death seems to be the worst thing. Let us examine Epicurus' argument. All we feel are sensations from our senses, but what happens in death is a complete loss of sensation, since our senses stop functioning upon death. That is it. That actually is his entire argument, which is quite simple and rather self-apparent. But he expands on how, with such an understanding of how death is nothing, our lives can be enriched. Once we have accepted that death is just the termination of life, which is just what it is and not something good or bad, life becomes better because it takes away a desire to live forever, so as to escape any suffering that comes with death, of which there are none. A human being who is not living experiences no sensation, so he experiences neither pain nor pleasure. There is nothing to be experienced, since sensations and experience only happens while a person is alive. Hence after death, with a person ceasing to exist, There is no sensation or experience whatsoever, so there is nothing good or bad in this non-existence. With such a knowledge, there is nothing terrible concerning death for a person who is alive, since he knows that death is not painful to him, since he will in fact feel nothing, since he no longer has life. If there is any suffering that comes from death, it is from the anticipation of death. But now that we have properly understood that there is nothing in death, we need not be afraid of death itself. Death itself need not concern the living, since it is nothing, and it need not concern the dead either, since they are no longer in existence. Instead, what should be our concern is how to live a good life. Paragraph 4. But the many at one moment shun death as the greatest of evils, and another yearn for it as a respite from all the evils in life. But the wise man neither seeks to escape life, nor fears the cessation of life, for neither does life offend him, nor does the absence of life seem to be any evil. And just as with food he does not seek simply the larger share and nothing else, but rather the most pleasant, so he seeks to enjoy not the longest period of time, but the most pleasant. Many people view their own death as something horrible, something to be avoided if possible, though it is of course not possible. Others may long for it as an escape from what they view to be their horrible lives. A wise person, however, in Epicurus's view, will not fear death nor try to escape their lives through death, since living is not in itself bad, nor is the absence of life particularly bad, since if there is no life, there is in fact nothing at all for that person. It is not about having the longest life, but the best life, the most pleasant life. Paragraph 5. And he who counsels the young man to live well but the old man to make a good end is foolish, not merely because of the desirability of life, but also because it is the same training which teaches to live well and to die well. Yet much worse still is the man who says it is good not to be born, but once born make haste to pass the gates of death. For if he says this from conviction, why does he not pass away out of life? For it is open to him to do so, if he had firmly made up his mind to this. But if he speaks in jest, his words are idle among men who cannot receive them. Those who elevate youth and advise the young to live a good life but yet think that all the old can look forward to is a nice death is mistaken, because firstly, the old still can have a good life in whatever remaining years is left to them. And secondly, to live well is also to die well. Those who think that it is better not to even be born at all, but when living just wants to hurry towards the end, has also a wrong way of looking at life, since such a person can obviously end his life if he is sincere about it. If he is not, then such views are unhelpful. Paragraph 7. We must then bear in mind that the future is neither ours, nor yet wholly not ours, so that we may not altogether expect it as sure to come, nor abandon hope of it, as if it will certainly not come. We must consider that of desires, some are natural, others vain, and of the natural, some are necessary, and others merely natural. And of the necessary, some are necessary for happiness, others for the repose of the body, and others for very life. The right understanding of these facts enables us to refer all choice and avoidance to the health of the body and the soul's freedom from disturbance, since this is the aim of the life of blessedness. For it is to obtain this end that we always act, namely to avoid pain and fear. And when this is once secured for us, all the tempest of the soul is dispersed, since the living creature has not to wander as though in search of something that is missing, and to look for some other thing by which he can fulfill the good of the soul and the good of the body. For it is then that we have need of pleasure, when we feel pain owing to the absence of pleasure. But when we do not feel pain, we no longer need pleasure. And for this cause we call pleasure the beginning and end of the blessed life. For we recognize pleasure as the first good innate in us, and from pleasure we begin every act of choice and avoidance, and to pleasure we return again, using the feeling as the standard by which we judge every good. The third principle of Epicurus' Tetrapharmakos is that we should know that the future depends in part on us. What is to come is not something we can definitively control, but yet it is also not totally out of our control. We cannot be sure of what is to happen, but we also do not have to lose all hope for our future. Some of our desires derive from our nature. Some desires are caused by our vanity and ego. Some of these natural desires are necessary, while others, while natural, are not entirely necessary and can be resisted. Of the desires that are necessary, some are needed so we can be happy, to have a good life. Some are to free our bodies from pain, and some are for life itself. Properly understanding the sources of our desires allow us to make our choices accordingly, to preserve our health and to keep our souls from being troubled, since to be healthy in body and soul is a blessing. This is the fourth principle of Epicurus' Tetrapharmakos. To have a healthy body and soul, we avoid pain and fear. If we manage to have this, the disturbances in our soul are calmed, since we no longer have to search for what is missing to obtain that healthy body and soul. It is when our soul and body are troubled that we need pleasure, since we feel pain due to an absence of pleasure. Once we do not have pain, we also do not need pleasure. Hence, pleasure is the starting point and objective for a blessed life. Pleasure is the first thing we recognize as good within ourselves. Pleasure guides our choices, and its opposite, pain, tells us what to avoid. It is the standard we have innately by which we judge things to be good or bad. Paragraph 8. And since pleasure is the first good and natural to us, for this very reason we do not choose every pleasure, but sometimes we pass over many pleasures when greater discomfort accrues to us as the result of them. And similarly, we think many pains better than pleasures, since a greater pleasure comes to us when we have endured pains for a long time. Every pleasure then, because of its natural kinship to us, is good, yet not every pleasure is to be chosen. Even as every pain also is an evil, yet not all are always of a nature to be avoided. Yet by a scale of comparison and the consideration of advantages and disadvantages, we must form our judgment on all these matters. For the good on certain occasions we treat as bad, and conversely the bad as good. Precisely because pleasure is what we seek, we have to be selective in our pleasures, since some pleasures may result in pain. Similarly, pain is not always a bad thing, since after having endured pain, a pleasure may be heightened. So not every pleasure has to be chosen, nor every pain avoided. We need to judge by comparing the relative pros and cons, the balance of pleasure and pain. What may be good in a certain situation may be bad in another, and likewise what may be bad in a certain situation may be good in another. And again, independence of desire we think a great good, not that we may at all times enjoy but a few things, but that if we do not possess many, we may enjoy the few in the genuine persuasion that those have the sweetest pleasure in luxury who least need it, and that all that is natural is easy to be obtained, but that which is superfluous is hard. And so plain savours bring us a pleasure equal to a luxurious diet, when all the pain due to one is removed. And bread and water produce the highest pleasure when one who needs them puts them to his lips. To grow accustomed therefore to simple and not luxurious diet gives us health to the full, and makes a man alert for the needful employments of life, and when after long intervals we approach luxuries, dispose us better towards them and fit us to be fearless of fortune. One good thing for us to be is to not be ruled by our desires. Not that having few things is necessarily good, but for a person who does not have a lot, to make do with the few things that she does have is good. Epicurus believes that the person who enjoys luxury most is the person who has no need of it. If one needs luxury, then to not have luxury would feel like a deprivation, a suffering, while to have it would just feel normal or neutral. For a person who has no need of luxury, if he does have it, then it can feel like a great pleasure. Nonetheless, what we need to satisfy our natural needs are easily fulfilled, but what is superfluous, what is unnecessary, is more difficult to obtain. Simple flavors in food can also give as much pleasure as a luxurious feast, when the suffering due to lack is satisfied. Epicurus gives an example of how a starving person may enjoy a simple meal of bread and water tremendously. Hence, habituating oneself to a simple diet and not a rich one is sufficient to keep a person healthy, but has other advantages such as making him alert to what his needs actually are. To occasionally have luxuries can then be more enjoyable. It also makes one resilient since he need not fear the vagaries of fortune. he need not fear losing his fortune and hence the ability to have a luxurious lifestyle. Paragraph 10. When therefore we maintain that pleasure is the end, we do not mean the pleasures of profligates and those that consist in sensuality, as is supposed by some who are either ignorant or disagree with us or do not understand, but freedom from pain in the body and from trouble in the mind. For it is not continuous drinkings and revellings, nor the satisfaction of lust, nor the enjoyment of fish and other luxuries of the wealthy table, which produce a pleasant life, but sober reasoning, searching out the motives for all choice and avoidance, and banishing mere opinions, to which are due the greatest disturbance of the spirit. While Epicurus' position is that pleasure is our objective, he does not mean that we need to be reckless or debauched. For him, pleasure is being free from pain in both body and mind. It is not drinking a lot of alcohol and partying, nor the satisfaction of all our cravings, nor eating rich foods, which produce a pleasant life, a good life. Instead, it is to use our reasoning to make our choices and to get rid of our whims which disturb our soul, that can give us a good life. Paragraph 11. Of all this, the beginning and the greatest good is prudence. Wherefore prudence is a more precious thing even than philosophy. For from prudence are sprung all the other virtues, and it teaches us that it is not possible to live pleasantly without living prudently, and honourably and justly. Nor again, to live a life of prudence, honour and justice without living pleasantly. For the virtues are by nature bound up with a pleasant life, and the pleasant life is inseparable from them. What is even prior to the pursuit of pleasure or philosophy is prudence. Prudence is to manage our affairs well by approaching them in a measured and considered way. Prudence is more valuable than philosophy because from it comes all our virtues, such as honour and justice. Prudence is what teaches us that in order to live well and with pleasure, we have to live prudently, honourably and justly. Conversely, without pleasure in our lives, we are unable to live prudently, honourably and justly. The virtues are tied together with a good and pleasurable life, and we cannot live a good life without living it virtuously. Paragraph 11 continues. For indeed who, think you, is a better man than he who holds reverent opinions concerning the gods, and is at all times free from fear of death, and has reasoned out the end ordained by nature? He understands that the limit of good things is easy to fulfill and easy to attain, whereas the cause of ills is either short in time or slight in pain. He laughs at destiny, whom some have introduced as the mistress of all things. He thinks that with us lies the chief power in determining events, some of which happen by necessity and some by chance, and some are within our control. For while necessity cannot be called to account, he sees that chance is inconstant, but that which is in our control is subject to no master, and to it are naturally attached praise and blame. A good person is one who is reverent towards the gods and not afraid of death. He is one who has used his powers of reasoning to live his life. Such a person understands that what is good for oneself is easy to obtain and suffering is brief or mild. He mocks fate. It is us that decides things, though some things happen necessarily and some things happen by chance. Some things necessarily have to happen, some things do not necessarily have to happen, but whether they happen or not are within our control. Some things happen by chance. However, chance is not within our control, and we cannot count on it to favour or disfavour us. For what is within our control, we have to decide and hence take responsibility for our decisions. We will be subject to praise when we choose well and blame when we choose badly. Paragraph 11 continues. For indeed, it were better to follow the myths about the gods than to become a slave to the destiny of the natural philosophers. For the former suggests a hope of placating the gods by worship, whereas the latter involves a necessity that knows no placation. And to chance he does not regard it as a god, as most men do, for in a god's act there is no disorder, nor as an uncertain cause of all things, for he does not believe that good and evil are given by chance to man for the framing of a blessed life, but that opportunities for great good and great evil are afforded by it. He therefore thinks it is better to be unfortunate in reasonable action than to prosper in unreason. For it is better in a man's action that what is well chosen should fail, rather than that what is ill chosen should be successful owing to chance. Epicurus thinks that it is better to believe in the providence of the gods than to place our confidence in cold-hard science, since if we believe in the gods, it means we can hope to persuade the gods through worship. Science, however, has no room for such mercy, and hence we can do nothing to sway it. Chance and luck exist, but it is not a divine force which we can appeal to. Chance and luck are not a suitable basis for a good life. Chance, however, can create opportunities such that we can choose to do good or bad. Nonetheless, it is better to act in a reasoned way, even if it turns out badly, than to do well just out of luck. It is better if we make good decisions, even if the outcomes turn out to be bad due to chance, than to make poor decisions that turn out well out of luck, since we cannot depend on luck, but we can depend on our reason. Paragraph 12. Meditate therefore on these things and things akin to them, night and day by yourself, and with a companion like to yourself. And never shall you be disturbed, waking or asleep, but you shall live like a god among men. For a man who lives among immortal blessings is not like to a mortal being. Think deeply, meditate upon these matters continuously, alone and with others, and if we manage to do this, we will not be troubled but will live the good life. Thank you. If you wish to support the Philosophical Bachelor, you can do so at worldwideweb.patreon.com/philosophicalbachelor.